The news coming out of Congo has sparked a global debate. Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, have announced plans to execute 170 people currently on death row, and the reactions couldn't be more divided. Officials claim these individuals are no ordinary criminals. They're said to be armed robbers and urban gang members who've been spreading violence and chaos in cities across the country. But here's something striking. Most of them are between 18 and 35 years old, young people in the prime of their lives. The announcement has drawn a mixed bag of reactions. While some in Congo see it as a necessary step to bring peace and order, international groups are raising red flags, calling it a violation of human rights. But will this drastic move really help curb the violence? Or is it just a desperate measure with uncertain outcomes? To understand this, let's take a closer look at the bigger picture. The DRC has faced waves of violence and insecurity for decades. Over 100 armed groups roam the country, terrorizing civilians and committing atrocities that many believe amount to war crimes. Among them is the infamous M23 rebel group, which has been linked to conflicts in the eastern part of the country. On top of that, there's another menace: urban gangs known locally as the Kulunas. These groups have been causing havoc in cities, adding to the chaos that has plagued the nation for years. Interestingly, Congo wasn't always a country with the death penalty in place. Back in 1981, the government decided to abolish it. The last known executions happened in 2003. But by 2006, the law was reinstated, paving the way for its use again in extreme cases. Fast forward to 2019, when Felix Tshisekedi took office as president. Instead of improving, the country's security situation took a turn for the worse. Even Kinshasa, the bustling capital, hasn't been spared from the rising violence and instability. This has put the government under immense pressure to act. In March 2024, authorities announced their decision to resume capital punishment. They argue that the measure is essential to tackle not only the gang violence, but also the growing influence of rebel groups, like the Rwanda-backed M23, which have been a thorn in the country's side. President Tshisekedi has defended the decision, stating that it's part of a broader strategy to root out traitors within the DRC's own forces and to bring an end to the urban terrorism that's claimed so many lives. On a quiet Sunday, January 12th, news broke from Congo that left the world buzzing. Over 170 prisoners on death row were being moved from the bustling capital to a heavily guarded prison in the northern Mangala province. Their final destination? A high-security facility called Anjenga, where they face execution. The Congolese Minister of Justice, Constant Mutamba, shared some details about the transfer. He explained that 70 of these inmates were flown out on Sunday, while 102 had already been relocated earlier. These men, according to Mutamba, are no strangers to crime. Convicted of armed robbery, they belong to a notorious group called the Kulunas, a term locals use for urban bandits. What's striking is their age. Most of them are between 18 and 35, still in the prime of their youth. However, Mutamba didn't specify when the executions would happen, leaving the timing shrouded in mystery. In Congo, opinions are split, as sharp as a knife. On one hand, many residents are relieved. For them, the Kulunas aren't just a name, they're a daily fear. Take Fiston Kakule, for example, a resident of Goma, a city in eastern Congo. "This decision is long overdue," he said. "After 8 p.m, it's like a ghost town here. No one dares to step out because of the Kulunas." But not everyone is cheering. Human rights activists and international organizations have raised alarms. Espoir Muhinuka, a well-known activist in Congo, worries about the darker side of such a decision. He cautions that political pressure could lead to rushed trials, unfair convictions, and even extrajudicial killings. "The fight against gangs needs more than just punishment," Muhinuka explained. "We need to tackle poverty, unemployment, and the social isolation that pushes young people into crime." These concerns echo beyond Congo's borders. Tigere Chiguta, Amnesty International's regional director for East and Southern Africa, called the decision to resume executions a grave injustice. Chiguta criticized the move as a direct violation of the fundamental right to life. He didn't hold back, describing it as a major setback for Congo and a betrayal of the promises made by President Tshisekedi's administration to uphold human rights. Whether they're soldiers, gang members, or civilians, every single person has a right to life, Chiguta stated. And it's the government's responsibility to protect that right, no matter what. If you are still watching this video, it means you love it. Why not take out a second of your time and hit that like button? This pushes us to make more content like this. Have you done that? Let's move on. Despite the heated debate, authorities in Congo seem firmly set on carrying out the executions. Their resolve stems from the chaos caused by a notorious group known as the Kulunas, or urban bandits, who have terrorized cities across the country for years. Armed with spiked clubs, machetes, and even guns, these gangs don't just rob, they unleash violence that leaves behind a trail of destruction, injury, and all too often, death. It's no surprise that citizens, fed up with living in fear, demanded action, forcing the government to respond with an aggressive campaign. Operation Zero Kuluna. This operation, spearheaded by Justice Minister Constant Mutamba, took a no-nonsense approach. Mutamba made it clear there would be no negotiating with these gangs. Under his leadership, many gang members were arrested and several were executed. Reports show that 45 gang members faced execution in December, with an additional 57 executed recently. The Kulunas were once largely confined to Kinshasa, Congo's capital, but their reach has spread, crossing the Congo River and sowing insecurity even in Brazzaville, the capital of neighboring Republic of Congo. This expansion has brought with it not just gang violence but also harsh crackdowns by local police. These gangs didn't appear out of nowhere. Their origins trace back to the early 2000s, a product of Congo's political, economic and social turmoil in the late 1990s. Under the rule of former President Mobutu Sese Seko, political corruption and urban decline plunged the nation into chaos, leaving many areas lawless. In the midst of anarchy and civil war, street gangs like the Kulunas emerged in Kinshasa's poorest neighborhoods as a desperate means of survival. Since then, the gangs have grown and evolved. Today, they dominate nearly every part of Kinshasa, sparing only the central district of Gombe, a hub for big businesses, government ministries, and embassies. The Kulunas operate with a loose, informal hierarchy, maintaining strong ties to the neighborhoods they control. For locals, they provide a twisted sense of protection, attacking outsiders while sparing those who live in their turf. Fighting plays a crucial role in the Kuluna culture. It's how members earn respect and establish their dominance. Criminal activities, though central to their way of life, are often just a means to an end, securing food, alcohol, or drugs. At night, Kinshasa's slums transform into battlegrounds as youth gangs turn the streets into arenas for brutal clashes. Yet contrary to stereotypes, Kulunas aren't outcasts. They're deeply woven into the fabric of urban life. Local leaders, such as neighborhood chiefs, know who they are and even interact with them. Unlike Shegas, street children abandoned by their families and shunned as sorcerers, the Kulunas have a level of acceptance within their communities. Many of them find work in Kinshasa's informal economy, blending into the everyday rhythm of the city. In Congo's shadowy underworld, the Kuluna gangs have connections that extend far beyond their neighborhoods. Their influence even weaves into the corridors of power and authority, creating an unsettling alliance between criminals, politicians, and security forces. Politicians, for instance, have found the Kulunas to be a useful, albeit dangerous tool. These gangs are often hired to do the dirty work that fuels Congo's rough-and-tumble political scene. Their tasks range from intimidating opponents to disrupting rallies, or even acting as personal bodyguards for certain officials. It's a relationship that thrives on violence, with the gangs becoming enforcers in exchange for protection and financial support. But their most profitable collaborations aren't with politicians, they're with law enforcement. In what's known locally as the coup, police and military personnel work hand in hand with the gangs. Sometimes officers are paid to look the other way, other times they go further, arming the gangs, providing insider information, and even selling off stolen goods. In return, gangs carry out crimes on behalf of corrupt officials or eliminate rival groups. Shockingly, there are even cases of police aiding Kulunas in gang wars or intervening when a member is arrested. This cozy relationship is one reason why efforts to tackle the Kuluna problem have floundered. Since 2013, the government has launched multiple crackdowns, including the infamous Operation Likofi. Between late 2013 and early 2014, this campaign saw Congolese police reportedly executing at least 51 young men and boys, while 31 others vanished without a trace. Despite the brutal approach, The gangs didn't disappear. Instead, their influence persisted, and Kinshasa's streets remained unsafe. Frustration over this failure likely pushed the government toward a harsher solution, reinstating the death penalty. The move has sparked heated debate, with some arguing it might finally deter gang violence, while others see it as yet another futile gesture in a deeply broken system. Interestingly, Congo isn't alone in revisiting the death penalty. Burkina Faso has recently hinted at a similar move under its current leader, President Ibrahim Traoré. While Burkina Faso abolished capital punishment from its penal code in 2018, talk of bringing it back has resurfaced, fueled by growing concerns over instability and crime. Historically, the death penalty in Burkina Faso was last used in 1988, during the rule of former President Blaise Compaoré. 4 politicians, including Defense Minister Jean-Baptiste Boukhari and Economic Promotion Minister Henri Zongo, were executed after being accused of plotting a coup. Since then, the country has turned away from such measures, until now. Under Traoré's administration, discussions about reintroducing the death penalty are reportedly underway. While no formal timeline has been announced, the government is said to be preparing a proposal for the Transitional Legislative Assembly. If approved, it could mark a dramatic shift in Burkina Faso's justice system. Burkina Faso's Justice Minister, Edasso Rodrigue Bayala, recently made headlines by confirming that the government is discussing the reintroduction of the death penalty as part of a new criminal code. This initiative aligns with President Ibrahim Traoré's vision for the country, but it has raised eyebrows and sparked debates both locally and internationally. So why would Traoré, a leader navigating an already turbulent political landscape, consider such a controversial move? The answer lies in Burkina Faso's long battle against terrorism and insecurity. For years, the nation has faced relentless attacks from jihadist groups, leaving thousands dead and countless more displaced. Despite external military support, including assistance from France, the violence has persisted. Traoré sees the death penalty as a tool to send a clear message. Anyone involved in terrorism, even Burkinabe citizens, will face the ultimate consequence. But there's more to this story. Since taking power, Traoré has faced relentless opposition, including multiple coup attempts. Some of these plots were orchestrated by high-ranking military officers and civilians, aiming to destabilize his leadership. One of the most shocking incidents involved former junta leader Paul-Henri Damiba, now in exile in Togo. Reports allege that Damiba, working with insurgents and other influential figures, plotted attacks to undermine Traoré's government. Among these was the tragic Bashirlo incident, which claimed hundreds of lives. These actions weren't just about power struggles, they were direct threats to the stability of the nation. In Traoré's eyes, the death penalty isn't just about punishing criminals, it's a deterrent to anyone who dares to conspire against the country's peace and security. His stance is clear. Burkina Faso's sovereignty and safety come first, no matter how controversial the methods. Unsurprisingly, this move has drawn criticism, particularly from Western nations and human rights organizations. Groups like Human Rights Watch have called the death penalty cruel and urged Burkina Faso to abandon plans to reinstate it. But this raises a question. How much influence should the West have over decisions made by African nations? Critics have labeled Traoré a dictator, pointing to his firm grip on power. Yet, unlike the stereotypical image of a leader clinging to luxury and corruption, Traoré has focused on rebuilding Burkina Faso. His priorities are clear: restoring security, achieving self-sufficiency, and putting the country back on track. For many Burkinabe, that vision outweighs the criticisms from abroad. It's not uncommon for leaders who challenge Western norms to be branded as authoritarian. But does rejecting external pressure automatically make someone a dictator? Or is it simply a reflection of a leader prioritizing their nation's unique challenges and needs? Did you find this video informative? If yes, be sure to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, The New Tourist.